Okay, now that we've got our migration, we can go ahead and create our database based on the code in this migration class. Once again, we'll use the .NET EF command line tool to do this. So I'll just clear this window, and then we can say .NET EF and database, and if we look at the help available for this command, then we've got the option to drop the database, which is effectively going to delete it, and we've got the option to update the database to a specified migration, or it's just going to apply all of the migrations that we have to update and create the database. So let's go ahead and use that command, and please do make sure your application is not running at this point, as I'm pretty sure this will not work if your API server is running. And we can say .NET EF database update and press return, and this is going to go ahead and build our application and create the database. And once that has happened, then we'll see some outputs in our log files. And if you're not seeing quite so much information, then the reason that I am seeing this level of detail is inside the app settings development.json, then I've got the Microsoft ASP.NET Core set to information. And that means that I get info logs and not just warning for these type of activities. Inside here, we can see that we're creating a table called EF Migrations History. This keeps track of the migrations that have already been applied to the database. And we are then creating the users table, and we're inserting a new entry into the EF Migrations History table. So let's go and take a look at our database. So I'll just close these down. And inside our Solution Explorer, we now have a file called dating.db. And if I click on this, then I can't open my database using VS Code in this way, because it's either binary or uses an unsupported text encoding. It's a database, don't forget. It's not just a file where you can take a look at the text. It is a file, but it's a SQLite file. And we need to use a SQLite tool to be able to see what's inside that database. Now, earlier on, one of our extensions that we installed is this SQLite extension. Please make sure you have this installed as an extension if you want to follow what I'm doing exactly here. There are other database viewing tools available, but this one I could just use inside VS Code. If this one doesn't work for you, you don't like it, you want something better, then the one that I would use as an alternative is called dbeaver, which is a free universal database tool. It is outside of VS Code, but it will allow you to view and do things with your database as well. But I'm going to demonstrate the one that we can use inside VS Code. So in order to use the SQLite tool, then we need to use our command palette once again. So once again, use the show all commands. And I'm going to say Shift Command and P, and then I'm going to look for SQLite and open database. This is going to take a look in your solution and look for anything called .db, that's a SQLite file, and then we can open the database. What this does is it gives us a new thing inside the Explorer, and we now have a SQLite Explorer. And if we expand dating.db, we can see we've got a users table that has two columns, an ID and a username, and we also have our EF migrations history with the migration ID and the product version. And if we take a look at the entries inside this table, we can see what's been applied to our database. And of course, we don't have any users yet, so if we hit play on this one, we don't see anything inside there. Now, just so that we've got some data to work with, let's just click on users, right click, and then say new query and insert. And then this gives us the boilerplate code we need to use with SQLite to insert something into this table. Now it takes two arguments, the ID and the username, and we're just going to specify this inside the values. And I'm just going to manually enter some data inside here. So I'm going to have an integer of 1, and I'm going to say Bob as the first one. And then I'm just going to copy this down 2 more times. And I'm going to create 2 more example users. Don't worry, we won't be doing this at any other point in this training course, but I just want a tiny bit of data to work with so that we can test an API controller endpoint, which is forming part of our walking skeleton. So for the time being, we'll just manually create 3 records in our database. Please ensure the integers are all different, otherwise Entity Framework will not accept this into our database. And then once you have this in place, just highlight everything and then just right click and say run selected query. And then this is going to go and create those 3 users in our database. So you'll see something like that when it has been successful. And then we can close this file down because we don't need to save it or do anything with it. But then if I hit play on the users again, now we can see that we've got 3 example users in our database. And we could use these for early testing just to make sure that we can query our database and return data from an API endpoint. And to do that, we'll need an API controller, which we'll take a look at creating next.